Hello, MCOM331. Today's lecture is on broadcast news production. It is Tuesday, April 7th. It's a pretty short lecture. A lot of this we've covered before, but it's important. These first couple of slides are talking about the commercial project assignment. Currently, I'm wondering if I should, instead of doing these last two assignments, do writing assignments, having you guys watch some videos and critique them, just a couple of paragraphs to demonstrate that you understand the concepts that we've been talking about. I'd like some feedback on that. I'm not sure if at this point, with shooting on the phones and editing on the phones, if continuing with the commercial project and the news package project is worth our time. Let me know what you think. Anyway, so here's an example, this first slide, of a project that a student had done for this assignment a couple of semesters ago. If you follow that link there. And if we do end up doing this assignment, the requirements for the submissions it's very similar to what we did for the PSA. And like I said, I'll kind of think about that more. I would like to hear your feedback. Alright, so electronic news gathering, or ENG as it is sometimes abbreviated to, is obviously just that, the gathering of news, but in a video and audio format. Originally designed for broadcast television, and that's kind of what we're focusing on today with this lecture, although obviously with the way things are today, things first air oftentimes on broadcast and then are moved over to the web. All the law and ethics that we discussed in the last lecture would apply to electronic news gathering. You have limited creative control over visuals, and the reason for that is, as a journalist, it's your job or duty to document what is happening, and things like creative color grading, or special effects, or any other type of editing that you would do in post-production. A lot of that gets pushed to the wayside because you just want to represent things as they truly are and not abstract them in any way. And so there are various forms and of formats of electronic news gatherings, and we've mentioned those previously, and we'll go over them again here soon, and different running time or lengths associated with those different formats. So the first format is a reader, and that's when the anchor is sitting at the news desk and there's no video, and they're just reading the script. And as it says there, oftentimes they have a over-the-shoulder graphic superimposed. Often or sometimes referred to as a quarter frame graphic as well, because it's about how much of the screen it takes up. So a voiceover, a VO. Typically, if you're working in a newsroom and you're using these forms day in, day out, you would refer to them by their acronym. So a voiceover is usually a VO. A sound on tape is a SOT. A voiceover sound on tape is a VOSOT, etc. So I know we've, I think, covered these in other lectures, but just quickly, the voiceover is when the anchor is reading the script. and on the script there's a designated spot where the B-roll comes in, and so in the control room the director calls for that video to be played and punches that in. Sound on tape is just a short audio clip of an interview without any other video. A voiceover slash sound on tape, acronym VOSOT, is where anchor reads the script with accompanying B-roll, and then there's a sound bite. And then after the sound bite comes back to the actor at the desk. A variant of that would be the VOSOT VO, where it's the same up until after the soundbite, rather than coming back to the anchor at the desk immediately. There's more video and more script that the anchor reads with that accompanying video, and then it would come back to the anchor after that. Sound on tape slash voiceover is just the kind of inverse of a VOSOT, where you would have this sound bite first. So the anchor would set that up. It would go play the sound bite. We would see the sound bite, hear the sound bite. After the sound bite, there would be B-roll, and the anchor would be reading the accompanying script. And then after that, generally 15-20 seconds, it would come back to the anchor at the desk. Package, we've talked about this, I believe, but a package is where everything is pre-edited. It's all self-contained in one video. So you have the B-roll, you have the nat sound, you have the voiceover, and you have the sound bites, and perhaps a reporter stand-up. That's all pre-edited, ready to play back on the broadcast. Typically about 1:30. That changes. It's continually getting shorter. The kind of benchmark for how long a package was back when I worked in news was maybe 2 minutes, maybe even a little longer than that. But just the way, we consume media these days, we like things to be short, concise. Stories that do get a little bit more time are generally feature stories, can be sometimes 4 minutes or more. Those are usually relegated to later in the show. You wouldn't want to have that at the beginning of the show. That's generally where the headlines are and breaking news is. And often also feature stories are on morning shows or noon shows. Generally the 5 o'clock and 10 o'clock shows are more hard news. So if you are going to have a feature story, though, it would be later in the show. So how do you determine which of these formats you use for a particular story? You first off determine how important the news contained in that story has, how much importance that it has. If you have a story and it's about librarians reading Dr. Seuss stories to kids at the local public library, that isn't earth-shattering headline news. So that would typically be something that would be in the VO format, or perhaps a VOSOT. And then the other thing is content. Some things just are going to be more visual in nature, and have more kind of what we call human appeal. Yeah, or some stories have more what we refer to as human interest, just those things that engage us, that make us really kind of feel like we're inside of the story and really enjoy it. Those things tend to make more for better packages. Timing. When did the story happen? You could have a really important story but maybe you only have time to get it on as a voiceover. Maybe you go live at, the broadcast is at 5, but something just happened at 4:45. So a reporter and photography team might have to rush something back to the story just to get it on, and you just get as much as you can on, just a voiceover. And then maybe they would go back and develop that story into a longer piece, perhaps into a package for the later show. And sometimes there's those things that are out of your control, like perhaps you have several interviews set up, scheduled, and you're having, you're thinking you're going to do a package on a particular news item, and then one of your interview subjects declines or, has a conflict and they can't do it, and then all of a sudden, it just doesn't work so well as a package. So, a lot of times it's something like that. And visuals, obviously, if something is really visually engaging, it's going to make for a better, longer produced piece, like a package. At this link, you can watch this Jack's News production from a couple years ago. Some of you might know Miranda. So in this clip, there are 3 different formats. There's a VOSAT, the first one, and then there's a SOT only, and then lastly there's a voiceover. At this link, there is an example of VOSAT VO, where it comes back to more voiceover with more video after the SOT. So this diagram, kind of with very childlike drawings that I did for a journalism camp a couple of summers ago, kind of details how you would construct a VOSAT, or actually a VOSAT VO. So you would see the anchor. He would start reading the story off his teleprompter, and then you have a sequence of shots: an establishing shot, wide shot, close shot, an action shot. Keeping in mind to use all of those types of sequences and different types of shots that we talked about back when we were doing our B-roll assignments. And then there's the soundbite from this fireman who apparently rescued this kitty out of the tree. And then after the soundbite, more video, and it looks like this person is happy to have their kitty back. Doesn't look like the kitty's as excited about it. It looks like a little frightened. But anyway, that's a good visualization of how you would construct a VOSAT. Here's just a fairly recent example of a news package, and this one is about at that 1:30 running length, kind of benchmark. This is from Denver. And then this is a longer one, over 4 minutes, and this is, like I said, it's a feature story, and so oftentimes those are the news packages that end up being a little longer, because there's more entertainment value, and they just, like I said, they're not usually at the beginning of a news broadcast with covering headline news. So the elements of a news package are the interviews, and typically you want to have at least two different people, and especially if it's like a hard news story, because you need to always have always represent, there's always 2 sides to a story, and so you always want to have representation of those 2 elements. Key point here is to frame them so that when they're edited together, that they're looking opposite directions. So we talked about that looking room, when you frame up your shot with the rule of thirds, and there's the empty part of the frame. So if you had someone looking um, to the left side of the frame on your first interview, and then you go to your second location and shoot your interview with the second person, you got to stop and remember, okay, which way did we have that person facing? And you want to do the other one opposite. It just helps change up the shots. They won't look as odd if they're edited right together, because sometimes that'll happen with no voiceover and B-roll in between. Um, and so there's a couple of reasons for it. Just variety, and then help with editing. It won't look like a jump cut. Always do the interviews first, or at least when possible. Sometimes when you're doing news and you have an interview lined up, and maybe that person's busy, that they say, hey, give me an extra 20 minutes and I'll be ready, and you are under a tight deadline and you need to shoot B-roll, that in those kind of instances, yeah, you would shoot your B-roll. But usually interviews first. Also, oftentimes with breaking news, if those end up being a package, those are instances when you end up shooting B-roll first, because you have to shoot the video when it's happening, when it's available to you. But on a day-to-day, typical kind of not like breaking news news package, do your interviews first. Stand-up is when you see the reporter. Generally, generally stand-ups are used either to bridge two parts of a story together, or to demonstrate something. That's supposed to say lav mic instead of stick mic or lav. Generally, stick mics are often used in stand-ups, and that is for two reasons. A lot of times stick mics and the windscreens that are available for stick mics do better as far as offering protection from wind noise. But also there's that branding aspect, because you have that flag on there that denotes your station. The voiceover or the voice track is another element, and then obviously the B-roll, and we covered that earlier in the semester. You know what that is. And the B-rolls are edited in sequences. Those wide shots, medium shots, close-up, extreme close-ups, cutaways, all those things that we talked about. The script. So, the crazy thing about doing TV news, when you do it day in, day out, at first you think, okay, how is it possible that you can go out and you can shoot all this stuff, you do interviews, and then write the script and get them all edited, in time for the broadcast. It seems crazy at first, but then it just becomes your routine, and it's not all that unachievable. In fact, it's very, very manageable. But so the script typically, at least the way it worked when I did news, is the reporter would log the interview, oftentimes verbatim, oftentimes just kind of in shorthand. But all that information from an interview that they glean from an interview goes to make the bulk of the story. So once that's finished, then they write the script in that 2-column audio-visual script format that we've talked about. A package, at least one, where it says natural sound break, that's what I was, referring to earlier as a nat sound pop. At least one SOT that is just nat sound. Yeah, more is better. It's engaging, because remember that TV is both audio and video. And the audio oftentimes gets overlooked, but it can be as important and as engaging as the video to tell stories. So these, this is actually getting into the assignment of our doing a news package, which would be our final assignment. But again, I'm up in the air whether this will be assigned or if we'll do writing assignments, and I want feedback on that if you could. But also, irregardless of that, this is good information for a news package, so I'm just going to go through it. So yeah, if we do get to it, you would turn in the script and the edited package. It would be at least 1 minute 30. And the workload there, the bit about, so obviously that's if we were still on campus, this would be a group project. Obviously, if we go through with it, you would be doing this individually. So just a little bit of information here about the state of the broadcast news industry. Basically, you know, if you read through this, that it is still very relevant. There's still a lot of jobs out there to be had. It has changed a lot in the last, you know, it's just continually changing, let's say that. There's a lot of consolidation and mergers, like the Dakota News Now in Sioux Falls, where the different stations share resources, and that's because their parent company is the same. There's another example of that in the Rapid City market. KEVN, which is the Fox affiliate out there, and KOTA, which is the ABC, are now merged or consolidated like that because they're both owned by Gray Broadcasting, I believe. So yeah, there's a lot of changes, but it's still a pretty strong industry with a lot of jobs out there. You know, it seemed, yeah, okay, and move on. Okay, so what makes a good package? Obviously, if the video looks good and is interesting and engaging, and it's well shot, then you're off to a good start for a good news package. And then, like I just said, remember that television is both audio and video. So that sound portion is often relegated to kind of like the back burner or the you know, a second thought. You know, you can really tell a reporter or photographer how much experience they have by how much nat sound they use, at least in my experience. You know, if they're using nat sound really cleverly and really well, you know, it means they know what they're doing. Compelling characters. Sometimes you interview people and, you know, you're hoping for it to be really engaging and colorful. And sometimes they are. Sometimes interviews are just duds where people are, you know, just kind of flat, monotone, give really short answers. So a compelling character with a good interview really helps. So it's often a good thing to stop and remember that with broadcast news, you know, and you can relate this to advertising too, or PR, in that all of these different formats of video are doing, they're all telling stories, but doing it in different ways. And, you know, part of telling a story is to convey emotion. So if your video and your sound bites really convey some type of emotion, that's going to engage the viewer. It's going to draw them in and make them more, relate more to your story. Good writing. obviously. Going way back early in the semester, we talked about how to write to video and sound, and we watched a few examples that how the voiceover and the video and the sound really kind of weave in and out of one another and really prop one another up, and maybe take one of those elements out or change it, and um, the story just really it's not the same. It's because they all need to come together. And great editing, knowing how to pace your sequences, how the length of your shots and all of that. That all comes with experience. Um, and so obviously good editing is also going to go a long way towards making a good news package. Okay, so that's all for today. Thursday, I'm going to talk about basic storytelling with video and audio. PSA review, I'm thinking about doing that. I'm thinking about compiling all of your PSAs into one video that that I could post a link for so you could all see them. I would still up in the air about that. And then next Tuesday we're going to talk about documentary production. So please, like I said earlier, get back to me with your thoughts about these last two assignments, and maybe doing some writing assignments, some video critiques instead. And we'll weigh the options. All right. Thank you. See you next time.